Yes, guys, that is correct. We're going to talk about 5 properties that you want to avoid if you're looking at moving to the Houston area. So that's true, guys. The real estate market in Houston continues to go up, but the truth is not every property you see on the MLS is a good investment. So in today's video, we're going to talk about those 5 properties. We're going to talk about what you need to do to either avoid buying those properties or to be very careful, and what types of steps can you take to protect yourself when buying these types of properties. Again, guys, my name is Sam Caratala. My wife and I have been selling homes in the Houston area for over 25 years. We've helped sellers and buyers just like you. So if you're relocating to the area, or if you were already in Houston and maybe you're looking at relocating to different parts of the cities, well, we've helped thousands of families and we'd love to help you. So make sure you fill out the information below, reach out to us, schedule a Zoom consultation. We would love to hear from you. So the first type of property that you may want to avoid if you're moving to Houston is properties that have flooded. I'm sure that you've heard that Houston is relatively flat. We are definitely flat. There's no hills. It's not like Austin, not like Dallas. In Houston, we're relatively flat. And so any water that comes down through the different bayous and the different creeks and the different lakes, all those tend to flow southward towards the Gulf of Mexico, and so towards Galveston. And so whenever it does rain, we usually have issues, especially if it rains for over 2 days consistently. We have from one day to another, we could have the floodwaters or go up 4 to 6 inches, sometimes even up to a foot, depending on what type of tropical storm we're having or what kind of hurricane is in the Gulf. So when we talk about flooded properties, why do we say be careful for that? Well, first of all, not every property that you buy will have a seller's disclosure. If you're buying a property from a seller, you're buying it directly from the bank as a foreclosure, you're thinking you're getting a deal. Well, they don't have to disclose if the property flooded. I mean, most likely the bank doesn't know if it flooded, so there's no disclosure there. Sometimes if you're buying it from an investor who bought it as a flip and maybe they bought it from the bank, so you don't know where they got the property. And so through those means or through the timeline, people may forget or they may not have been disclosed to that property flooded. So you need to be careful for areas that are known to flood. In Houston, we have the FEMA flood maps. And those maps are kept pretty up to date with the flood map. You have a 100-year flood zone, you have a 500-year flood zone. So you're marked by area X, they're marked by different terminologies to determine if you're in a flood zone. But one thing I always suggest that my clients do is whenever you do go to the property, if you're looking at a property that might be an older property, if you see that the downstairs is completely remodeled and the upstairs is not, that may be a sign that the property was flooded, because a lot of times these sellers, they get the money from the insurance, they'll repair the downstairs, but they won't fix the rest of the house that wasn't affected. Another thing that you may want to do is you may want to make sure that when you do buy a property, even if it is a flooded property, even if it's not, you want to do an inspection, a thorough inspection. So hire a third-party company. We just had one done in a property, and this house was not in a flood zone, but he was able to determine if there was still moisture in the walls. There was a section of the property, there was no pipes behind it, but there was a section that shows signs of moisture. So we make sure to have that taken care of. You can also go and try to get an insurance quote on that property. If it's a property that you really like, you're going to have to get insurance anyways. So go ahead and call your insurance company and see if there's any claims that were filed against the property. The seller's disclosure that you got from the seller, that will tell you any type of repairs that were made that were, something, that material that has to be disclosed. If there's any major leaks, if there was any major repairs, if they had termites, all of that should be disclosed in the seller's disclosure, but don't trust the seller. If you call your insurance company, they'll get you maybe a list of any claims that were against that property. And so that way I've had, clients that have gone back to the seller and say, hey, well, it seems like you had a leak at some point. You had some money that was given to you by the insurance company. What happened there? And then they're like, well, I forgot to tell you that there was a leak because there was a broken pipe, but we got it fixed and everything's fine. But, obviously they never disclosed to you. So it's super important that you get a seller disclosure, that you get an inspection, and that you go to your insurance company. That's the first type of property you want to avoid. The other type of property that you want to avoid is maybe properties that have had foundation issues. Because our soil here is mostly clay, it does tend to move. You will see properties that maybe in the first 10 years that it was under warranty with the builder, there was no issues whatsoever, but the trees in those neighborhoods are not mature trees. And so you're not going to have really any foundation issues. But whenever you have these huge oak trees in these neighborhoods, then you sometimes will have foundation issues in those neighborhoods. So it's very important that you walk the property on the exterior, look for cracks in the brick, look for cracks in maybe the foundation. Also, when you're inside the property, you may want to open doors. If the doors are starting to stick in certain areas, that could be a sign of foundation problems. Look for cracks in the corners of the walls by the doors. Sometimes buyers confuse settlement cracks with foundation issues. So make sure that you're looking closer to the doors. Also look at your tile. Sometimes if somebody has a tile flooring, you can see, cracks in the tile. And so some of that could be indication of some foundation issues. And then if you get an inspection on a property, which I recommend for every buyer, even if you're buying new construction or resale, get an inspection. And usually the inspector will bring a zip line. So basically is what they have. They have a little box, they put it on the ground, and they can measure where there is some sloping. Another trick that I like to do is I like to carry a small ball with me when I walk into a property. And if I do think that property is older, maybe I start looking and noticing areas where, hey, this could have some foundation issues. And then you can actually just put the ball on the ground and you can see where it actually slopes or rose. And so that could be indication that the property may have foundation issues. But again, you get a thorough home inspection. That will help you in that case. And if you do have foundation issues, also keep in mind it could be something that is pricey. At first, foundation issues may seem like, hey, well, I don't have to make a lot of repairs. It just needs a sloping a little bit on this side. I should be fine for 5-10 years. But the truth is, as the property continues to move, the foundation issues may continue to get worse and worse. And you buy a property that's going to need 50 pilings put in, and not all of them are exterior. Sometimes they have to get into the property, so they have to drill through the whatever you have in the house. So if it's in one of your bedrooms, you may have to drill through that flooring to get to the foundation to make the foundation repair. If not, if they have to go from the exterior and get to that area, it's going to cost you a lot more money. I've helped lots of buyers where they bought with the property with foundation issues, and we were still able to get a great deal. I've even had it where the repairs were done prior to closing. We were able to pay for the foundation repair at the closing table, so it didn't cost the seller money. So there's ways to go around it, but that is something that if you're a first-time home buyer, you may want to avoid because you may be biting more than you can actually chew. So that's the second type of property you may want to avoid. The third type of property you may want to avoid are properties with stucco exterior. Stucco is very popular here in Houston. For the last 30 years, it's become a lot more popular than before. A lot of the stucco homes that you see down in the South and in Florida, a lot of that trend moved to Houston. Obviously, California does a lot of stucco properties. But with our humidity, with our moisture levels here, stucco is not always the best product, especially if you don't know the builder who put the stucco. It's a process to put stucco, and a lot of builders, they skip some of the steps just to get it done cheaper. So you want to make sure that if you are buying a property that does have stucco, that you thoroughly look at the stucco, that you look for cracks. Obviously, if there's foundation issues or there's settling, guess what? The stucco is also going to crack. Stucco becomes a maintenance issue at times because yes, it's pretty, but you have to look for cracks. And if you see cracks, you have to, every so many years, you have to seal them. You have to paint it. You have to caulk around the windows. You have to maintain stucco so that it does not become an issue and that it's installed right. So one thing I recommend is before you buy a property that has stucco, even with new construction, that you do a thorough stucco inspection. A third-party inspection is going to cost, depending on the size of the house, going to cost anywhere from $300 to $400 to maybe $1,000. But if you do a stucco inspection, that's going to cost more money because what they have to do is they have to drill into the stucco in certain areas to make sure that there's no issues with moisture that's getting back there. Usually they'll choose areas under windows, under balconies, because that's typically where you have a lot of the issues. I had a seller that purchased a property, and then 2 years after they purchased it, they called me and they wanted me to list their property. We listed it. We had an offer immediately. And that buyer actually did a stucco inspection. The seller, when they bought the property, they didn't use me, but they did not get a stucco inspection. They trusted that the previous owner had disclosed everything, and they disclosed that there was not any stucco issues with the property. Well, the buyer's inspector found that the house had extensive stucco issues. The bill was over $20,000 to fix that stucco issue. And so what did my seller do? Well, my seller, unfortunately, they had to reduce the price to be able to get it sold, but they turned around and they actually sued the previous seller for not disclosing. And the only way that we knew they'd known about the stucco issues was because the company that inspected it had inspected it for the seller previously. So be very careful with stucco. I love the product. It looks great. I wouldn't have it in my own house, but if you do because you like it, make sure that you maintain it, make sure that you seal, make sure that if you see any cracks that you stay on top of that, because that could be a costly mistake. I started my career in the city of Houston with 3 and 4 story townhomes with a lot of stucco. There's builders that I know that have gone out of business because of all of the stucco claims. So make sure that you get a stucco inspection, make sure that you maintain the stucco if you are going to buy a property with stucco issues. So the number 4 type of property that you may want to avoid is properties that have shared walls. So the 4th type of property that you want to avoid buying if you're moving to Houston is properties that have either shared walls or shared foundation. And why do I say that? Well, a lot of builders, especially in the city, a lot of the builders, they build duplexes, triplexes. They build, they take a property that an old, single family home, they tear it down and they subdivide it into multiple lots. And then a lot of those have shared driveways or shared even foundations, shared roof lines. And so, but a lot of those, because they still have their private driveways, they don't do HOAs to protect the owners. And so what tends to happen in that case? Well, imagine a property 5 years later, you go to sell that property and you find out that your unit is in the middle and your unit needs foundation work. Well, guess what? That foundation is part of the other 2 homes. And so now instead of you making that foundation repair, now everyone has to make foundation repairs to that. So you have to be careful. We had a property that we had it under contract. The seller was willing to make the repairs, but he couldn't make the repairs because the attaching unit, they had to sign off that there would be okay if, the seller fixed his side, but it would cause more issues on their side. Of course, no owner is going to want to sign that. And so our seller couldn't make the repair. And so the buyer got cold feet and backed out. And so make sure that if you are buying something where it is a common foundation or a common wall, that there is some type of agreement in place saying that, hey, if there is a foundation issue, that you're going to agree to fix it, or if there's an issue with the wall or there's an issue with the roof, that you will definitely fix it all at one time. I mean, there's duplexes all over town where you see where it's one roof, but you have one seller who's fixed his roof recently, and then you have the other seller whose roof is 20 years old, and they're just all the roofing material is all connected, but half of it is brand new, the other half is not. So that causes issues with resale, causes issue with sellability. So be careful if you are buying a property that has a shared driveway or a shared foundation or a shared roof. Be careful when you buy those properties. Make sure that you do your inspections. Make sure that you look at any type of common area agreements, roof agreements, anything like that that's going to protect you if you go to sell that property in the future. And so that's the 4th type of property. And the 5th type of property that you want to be careful for are outdated townhomes and gated communities. Houston has a lot of gated communities, and a lot of those homes tend to be, outdated. Not only are they townhouses, so you basically, the HOA covers the roof, they cover the foundation, they cover the gate, they cover all the common areas, landscaping, they cover all of that. So a lot of money has to be paid to maintain these areas, parts of the house, the roof, the walls, the foundation. That costs a lot of money. And with our soil, with our trees, that can cause foundation issues. Keep in mind that a lot of these HOAs, every so many years, are going to have special assessments that they're going to ask the owners to pay. And so you may have an HOA due that's, let's say it's $300-400 a month. And you're okay paying that because it covers a gate, it covers a roof, it covers, insurance, it covers everything. But then there's a special assessment that's done because they were not able to pay for these big repairs. And so now you have to pay an additional $10,000 a year for 2 years to pay that special assessment back. We've had sellers in that situation as well, where they go to sell a house, they have to disclose, yeah, this is my HOA, but keep in mind that the HOA has a deficit and we have to pay an additional, $5,000 in 3 months to be able to repair the fence that was damaged. And if you are buying in a neighborhood like this, the bank is most likely going to require a resale certificate is what they call. So they're going to want something from the HOA that shows not only who is the owner occupants. You have to have a certain amount of those homeowners that are owner occupants, not tenants. And so they have to show that. They also have to show how much money they have in reserve. They have to show the funds that they have. All of that is required by a lot of lenders. So if the property doesn't meet that. So if let's say there's more tenants than there are owners, your lender may not lend on that property. And so you may have to go from an FHA with 3.5% down, having to go to a conventional financing with 20% down. So it does affect how you can buy these properties if you are buying in a outdated townhouse or kind of gated community that has a lot of units that's super outdated. So be careful when you're buying those types of properties. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have any questions about these types of properties, again, don't be scared. If you like stucco homes, believe me, they're popular. I like them. They're cool to look at. I wouldn't buy one of them for myself, but again, a lot of our buyers do. So make sure that you hire the right realtor who knows how to look at these properties and knows what to look for to take care of your investment. Whenever I talk to my buyers, I always tell them, yes, the property's pretty. I like the property, works for you. We're going to find you the perfect property. But I always look at the resale aspect of that property, because 25 years in the business, 90% of our clients are past clients, they're referrals. And so I always look at a property and I always ask myself, am I going to be able to resell that property in the future? I may tell you not to buy a property. Even though you may love the property, I may tell you, hey, listen, you're on a busy street. The property has all these issues. It's going to cost you a buttload to fix it. So, let's wait. Let's find you another property. And so, and I've done that before for your best interest every step of the way. But more importantly, Houston is beautiful. There's a lot of different choices, especially right now. There's a huge need of housing. There's a lot of inventory. There's a lot of buyers. A lot of the buyers are waiting to enter the market. But if you are looking at buying right now, it is a great opportunity for you to get the right property. And again, don't let these properties scare you. If you like them, contact us. We would love to schedule a consultation, talk about some of the features, talk about some of the amenities, talk about how we can protect you from making sure that if you do buy one of these properties that you are well protected. So again, guys, Sam Caratala, watch one of these videos here. So this is going to be one of our new construction home tours. We'd love for you to look at these. Obviously, with new construction, there's less issues, but check out that video and make sure you subscribe, and that way you're notified when we drop new videos. Take care, guys.